Good morning, everybody. We are in Parashat Toldot. Of course, like all the parashot, interesting and also not forgetting Rosh Chodesh. This Rosh Chodesh today, so Chodesh Tov to everybody, a good month. Chodesh Kislev. We are approaching Chanukah, and our parsha is one of the most famous parashiot in the Torah because of selling the Bchorah of Esav to Yaakov. We all know the story. But I want to start and talk about the beginning of the parsha, which is also puzzling. The Torah is telling us, Ele toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham. Those are the toldot of Yitzchak, the son of Avraham. Avraham ulidet Yitzchak. Abraham gave birth to Yitzchak. If Yitzchak is the son of Avraham, so of course Avraham is the father of Yitzchak. So why is the Torah telling us it again? And there are so many answers about this. And the most famous one is that there was a problem because we all know that Ele Toldot Yitzchak his children are Yaakov and Esav. So one is a tzaddik and the other one is a rasha. So people used to laugh and say, the grandfather is not Avram, the grandfather is Avimelech, because till she was captured by Avimelech and brought to his palace, she didn't have any children. Only after she left the palace, suddenly she is pregnant and she's got a child. And the proof is that the son, Yitzchak, has got two children. One is evil and one is good. One is a tzaddik, one is a rasha. So the tzaddik is from the side of Sarah and the rasha is from the side of Avimelech. So what did God do? God made that the Yitzchak looked like a spitting image of Avraham Avinu. In other words, anybody who looked at Yitzchak says, Avraham ulidet Yitzchak. Avraham is the father, definitely. Cannot be something else. Then there is also a very important point in all this, telling us the father, the son, because they say when Yitzchak came to the world, there was a lot of laughter in the world, or let's say everybody was happy and was laughing from joy. And we know it all started before. When Kadosh Baruch Hu told Avraham Avinu is going to have a son, he laughed. He was happy. And then Sarah Imenu also the same. And God is telling Avraham, you are going to call this son that is going to be born Yitzchak. Yitzchak is laughing, is happiness, is joy. And they say when Yitzchak came to the world, there was a lot of joy in all the world. And the question is, why did this happen this way? Why was it is so much happiness when Yitzchak came to the world? What with Avram? What with Yaakov? The thing is that in life, when we see somebody is successful and we look at his son, what's happening with his son? Now, if he's going into ways of the father, or we say, okay, the father was very successful transferring the message to the son. And here we have to understand that God is telling us, I'm going to keep my covenant with Yitzchak. Why with Yitzchak? What with Avram? And if we're going to go further out, the Midrash says that when Avram Avinu was in the fire, being thrown to the fire by a Nimrod, and he was saved by God, so the angels asked God, why is he saving Avram Avinu? Because he's going to have children that are not exactly tzaddikim. And we know about Ishmael, we know about Esav, and then all of the others also. So what is God saying? I'm saving him because of his grandson, Yaakov. Now, this is really exaggerating. But what Avraham Avinu's got no rights? Avraham Avinu's got no merit? What's happening here? Avraham Avinu is the one who found out about God. He was the first one to discover God. Then also, the Torah is telling us that a tzaddik, a son of a tzaddik, is more important than a tzaddik, a son of a rasha. And on top of this, when we see Rivka and Yitzchak praying for children, God is listening to Yitzchak and not to Rivka. And Rashi says, why did they listen to Yitzchak and not to Rivka? Because Rivka is a daughter of a rasha, and Yitzchak is a son of a tzaddik. And this makes it even more difficult. Sorry, what's going on here? Who would you think is more important? Who would you think is holier, a one who built himself by himself, fighting against all the people around him, like Avram Avinu, or somebody was born in a house of a tzaddik. This is not a big deal. And how is the Torah telling us that a tzaddik, a son of a tzaddik, is like more important and more holy than the tzaddik, a son of a rasha? Could it be that Avraham Avinu was saved because of Yaakov? In order to understand it, I think I told you once before. Years ago, I've been in Holland in a certain place where they all were making cheese. And there was one factory that was making cheese, was famous in the all over the world. Every week they were sent to all over the world the cheeses that they were made. And when you went in to the factory, you saw in the entrance hall pictures of all the people who were involved, and it started from the great founder who started the whole thing. And when you start checking and telling and looking what's happening here, you discovered that the great-grandfather, the one who started it all, he was a guy that found out the secret of making a cheese so tasty that everybody liked it. And he was starting to produce this special cheese and was selling it to everybody. And also he was a good guy. He taught all his friends about the secret. And they all started and manufactured by themselves. But then what happened? Those he taught them about the secret, when they died, there was nobody to go on with the thing. They didn't take the secret and put it to the children and gave it to the children. They took the secret to the grave. But this guy, he gave the secret to his children and his children to the great children. And then when you understand it, so when you see that there is a third generation in the business, what does it mean? Who is the great guy? The third generation or the one who started it all? What do you think? The one who started it all. And that's exactly the point. Avraham Avinu was saved because of Yaakov? No, because Yaakov was the proof that Avraham Avinu was successful in transferring the message to the third generation. And when it gets to a third generation, that's it. And that's what happened with this cheese factory, the same thing. And this is exactly what the Torah is telling us. When Yitzchak came to the world, everybody was joyful. And he called Yitzchak. Why? And with him, he's doing the covenant God. Why? Because this is the proof that Avraham Avinu, who was chosen, because Leman Yetzaved Banav V'charav, because he was chosen because of his ability to transfer the message to the next generation. And what is the proof? Okay, blah, blah, blah. What is the proof to it? The proof is that when we look, we see Yitzchak was born. But then Yitzchak, that's not enough. After Yitzchak came Yaakov. So now this is already a real proof. So this is what the Torah is telling us, what the Midrash is telling us. Not that Yaakov was more important. Not that Yitzchak was more important. On the contrary, they are the proof that Avraham Avinu is the greatest of all, because he was not the only one in the generation that was a tzaddik. There was this famous yeshiva of Shem Ve'ever. They were also tzaddikim. But what happened to them? Nobody hears about them. That's exactly the difference. And that's exactly the same story, lahavdi, yeah, with this cheese factory. Because there were a lot that knew the secret, but nobody did anything with it more than when he was doing it. Did he take the secret to his grave? He didn't transfer it to the next generation. But this other guy, he loved his cheese so much, and he says, I'm going to give this thing to my children because I love my children, so I'm going to give it to them. This is all based on the love. This is all based on how much you love. If the love of Avraham Avinu was less, or he was not built of love, of chesed, he wouldn't be so let's say, trying so hard to transfer the message. But because Avraham Avinu is Avraham Avinu, and the proof is unbelievable. When we look at Yitzchak, when Yitzchak came to the world, wow. And this is what the Torah is telling us. Ele toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham. Yitzchak was the son of Avram, but he didn't come from just nowhere. Avraham olidet Yitzchak. Who gave Yitzchak the power? Avram Avinu. Because without Avram Avinu, there was no Yitzchak. And with no Avram, there was no Yaakov. And that's exactly the point. Not that anybody will think for a minute that Yitzchak is more important. Then there is another interesting thing here when we read this. In life, when you know a famous guy, for example, do you know who is the son of Bill Gates? Do you know? And if you know, we'll say, this is the son of Bill Gates. From the other side, do you know the father of Bill Gates? Also no. And if you knew, you would call him the father of Bill Gates. So who is the important guy here? When I say he is the father of Bill Gates, not the father is important, Bill Gates is important. If I say this is the son of Bill Gates, again, who is important? Not the son, the father is important, Bill Gates. In other words, if somebody is the important guy, he is going to be named after the son, or a father is going to be named after him. But what happens if both of them are important and both of them doing the good job? So we'd say, this is Rabbi this, for example, the son of the Rabbi this, or this is Rabbi this, his father was Rabbi this, the son was Rabbi this. This is what the Torah is telling us. Avram Avinu was proud with his son Yitzchak, and Yitzchak was proud with his father Avram, and they were both important, very important. This is why Ele toldot Yitzchak ben Avraham. Yes, he is the son of Abraham, the famous Avram. Avraham olidet Yitzchak, and Avram was so proud he got this good son Yitzchak. So here we see, and by the way, we only touched a part of the thing that we can learn from this pasuk. The Torah is using words not just for the sake of making it nice to hear. It's much more. It's every word, every letter, every dot has got a meaning. And here we saw a little about this interesting thing. Then we have another interesting point, water. We have a whole argument about water in our parsha, and the Torah is telling us again and again about the water wells that Avraham Avinu discovered. He digged them, and then the Palestinians, they came, the Plishtim, and covered them with the dirt, and then Yitzchak came and took them and built it again, and then he looked for other wells, and he dig into the hole and looked for more water and more water. What is the idea behind it? He didn't give up. Water is Torah. Water is the basic element of life, physical and spiritual, because water is Torah in the spiritual way, and water is the life of the whole world. So if you want to understand what's happening here, I don't know if you know, but let's say 50 years ago, if you went to Eilat, there was not, I think, one kosher restaurant, maybe one or two, no more. Shabbos in Eilat looked like a normal day. No difference between Shabbos and Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. When we went there a few years ago, and let's say last year, for example, something unbelievable. So many kosher restaurants, so many shuls, synagogues. And on Shabbos, that Eilat is like it's built on Shabbos. All the tourists and everybody, like Shabbos is, people are going for the weekend. They want all the shops open. And I find out when I walk around on Shabbos, there are a lot of shops that are shut on Shabbos, closed. Miracle. And this reminded me this fight on the water wells, this fight of Be'erot Hamayim. There must be a group of people that came to Eilat and decided to put a little holiness into this town. And I'm sure that people were shouting at them, what do you say? We don't want to hear from it. Leave us alone. This is Eilat. This is thing. But they didn't give up. They did it again and again and again. And eventually they have a yeshiva there. They have and religion is there unbelievable. They have also a Haredim there. They have everything there. And shul, so many, unbelievable. This is exactly the story. You never give up. By the way, it's not only in a spiritual side, also from the physical side. For example, I think I told you once before, this professor starting his course in university, and all the students come from the first lesson, and this guy's got an aquarium, a big aquarium on his table, on his desk. And near the aquarium is got big stones, rocks. And they all look. They don't know what this guy does. This is our course in, I don't know what philosophy or whatever, but nothing to do with experiments, nothing. And the professor says, we're going to start our course with an experiment. Just everybody looks, what's going on here? It wasn't written in the plan. And he takes the rocks and puts them into this big aquarium. He fills up the aquarium with rocks and he's asking the class, the students, what do you think? Is it full? He says, yes, it's full. Then he takes 2 bags of small stones. I don't know how you call them, chatzatz, whatever, small stones. And he pulls them into the aquarium and they go in beneath the holes of the big rocks and he fills it up. They look at him, what does he want from us? And he says, no, is it full now? He says, of course, everybody's shouting, full, full. Then he takes 2 bags from his drawer and they filled up with sand. And he's pouring the sand into the aquarium and the sand goes in because it goes in between the little stones and the big stones. And he fills up the aquarium. Now it's full up with rocks, small stones, and sand. And he says, no, what do you think now? He says, wow, completely full. Nothing can go in more. He takes a bottle of water, a big bottle of water that he had on the desk, and he pours the water into the aquarium, which is full, but the water go into the sand and a lot of water, he says. Did you see what's happening? I want to tell you. When you learn here in this school, sometimes we'll get to a point, wow, we cannot put any more in. It doesn't go in. It's so much. It's too much for us. Remember the water. Water is knowledge. And it goes in, and you don't know how much you can go in. It goes in and in. And for us, the lesson is very clear. The Torah is water, as we said in the beginning. And this is the whole argument. Sometimes we feel we are full up. We cannot learn anymore. We cannot do anything more. Or in the case of trying something and it doesn't work, okay, we did whatever we could. Remember Rabbi Akiva, again with the water. When he went out to the field and he saw this rock with a hole in the rock and water dripping on the rock, and he was looking there for an hour, and you didn't see that the drops did anything in the rock, but the evidence was there. The rocks got a hole, which means that each drop did something. You didn't see it. You could stay there for an hour, even for 2 hours, you know what, even for a day, and you wouldn't see what the drops of water do. Only after a long period of time, you will see the effect. And this is exactly in life. Sometimes you give up. I cannot do this anymore. So remember the water. Remember the power of water. Remember that the water is the most important asset in life. Spiritually point of view, this is the Torah. Knowledge, spirituality. There is always a place for more. Always. You can always put more. And you can always, when you try enough, you will see it will go in. The same way as the drops did a hole in the rock. The same way with the aquarium, when the water went in more and more. And this is exactly the same with those water whales that Yitzchak was fighting to open them again and to discover new ones. And he didn't give up. They were fighting with him. They were filling the holes. This is the prophet Isaiah, I think, says, let me see if I find it. Kishtayim ra'ot asami. 2 bad things did my people. Oti azvu mekor mayim chayim. They left me, the source of life water. Lachtzov lahem, to dig be'erot nishbarim. Asher lo yachilu mayim. To dig holes of water, but they don't have any water. Now it's very interesting. In Hebrew, It's written Be'erot, Bet Aleph Resh Vav Taf. But the dots so that you read it Borot. You know what's the difference between a bor and a be'er? A bor is a hole in the earth, just a hole. But a be'er is living water that comes out and you take every time fresh water. Now, what happens to water that are in a hole in the like a bore, and they don't produce any more water? There is no circulation of water. The water can be deadly. After a period of time, you cannot drink them. They are poisonous. And this is exactly the difference between what's happening here with Yitzchak and the Plishtim. The Plishtim, they fill up the water, the water well with sand. In other words, it looks on the outside like a water well. But the truth is, it's a bore. And even if you see water there, the water are poisonous because they are there for a long time and there is no circulation of water. From the other side, a be'er, a whale, mayim chaim, it's life water. That's the real thing. Unfortunately in life, like here we see what the prophet is saying, be'erot is written. It looks like a be'er. It looks like something with a whale with live water. But the real truth, it's not a be'er, it's a bore. It's a pit of water that don't move. In other words, poisonous water. And this is exactly when we approach Hanukkah, the idea of the Greek. From the outside, it looks beautiful and unbelievable what they believe in. They are the greatest philosopher. They brought a lot of things to the world, light to the world. But is it light or is it darkness? Is it standing water, which are poisonous, that look like, or is it life water? And this is the fight that we have. In life, we will find people that they look like tzaddikim. But are they really tzaddikim? What's inside? You know, today, there are so many rabbis as a title. And I said it once before, I said, I'm sorry to say, to be a rabbi is not a title in university. You want to say that this guy learned about the laws of the Torah? Call him Professor Torah. Professor to Torah. Don't call him a rabbi. Because doing a test and being successful in answering the answers of what the law is of the Torah doesn't make you a rabbi. In other words, a rabbi is not a title of university. A rabbi is something from the inside. It's not something that looks nice from the outside and inside. It's rotten, filled with poisonous water. It's something with life water, with the circulation of life. And this is the different. And this is this big fight of Yitzchak. And this is the idea of who is Yitzchak? Where does he come from? Avraham olidet Yitzchak. This is the power from Avram with the combination of the power of Yitzchak. And together they brought to the world afterwards with a combination of the chesed of Avram and the yira, the fear of Yitzchak. They brought Yaakov Avinu. And also with Yaakov Avinu, we see this fight with Esau. And we don't really know what's going on here. And there's so much to talk about stealing the blessing. Who is Esau? Who is Yaakov? We all know. But we sometimes don't realize that looking from the outside, they look the same. Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Esau look the same. What do I mean? They learn in the same place, maybe in the same yeshiva. But this is one of the reasons that in Me'arat HaMachpelah in Hebron, there is, with our ancestors, also buried the head of Esau. We talked about it in the past. And everybody's asking, why? Why is the head of Esau in the cave and not all his body? Or what is this Rasha doing in the cave? Because there's a big lesson. Because with his head, he had the same head as Yaakov. They were twins. They were raised up in the same home. He knew the laws and he knew the laws. The point of view was, the difference was that Yaakov practiced what he knows. Esau didn't. Esau wanted to go after his lust, after his desires, and that's what he did. So from the outside, they look the same. But from the inside, a big difference. This is why the head that had all the knowledge was in the buried in the cave in Ma'arat HaMachpelah, but not the body, because there was no connection with the knowledge and the body with Esav, not like Yaakov that connected both things. So in other words, again, they look alike from the outside. They will both look like nice people, like even tzaddikim. Maybe they also wore the same clothes exactly. It's not like Esav was like with tattoos and earrings and with a cuckoo or whatever you think. No, he had the same clothes as Yaakov. And maybe even talked the same. This is why he succeeded of cheating his father, playing the game. But again, the same lesson. Is it a be'er? Is it a whale of life water? Or is it a bore? Is it a pit full with poisonous water? From the outside, looks the same. The difference is, this is what the Torah is telling us. Avraham olidet Yitzchak. Avram gave the message, transferred it to Yitzchak. And Yitzchak he went on with the same method. On the other side, when Yaakov and Esav came to it, Yaakov took the message. He was the son of Yitzchak. Bo, in this part, he was the continuance of Yitzchak, not Esav. Esav was the bad side. Esav was the one who maybe looks from the outside the same, but the inside no. So the big lesson of us today is that we have to take the message from our ancestors and transfer it to our children, but be aware that what we look from the outside will be also from the inside, and the inside will transfer to the outside. They say about Rivka, she was good looking. On Sarah, they say she was beautiful. What is the difference? Because the Torah wants to show us that what is important is not the outside beauty. It's the look of goodness. Tovat mareh. She looked good. She had the kindness inside her, and it was reflected in her face. It was what she had inside was outside. This is a life. This is water of life. This is the well of life water. This is the big fight that Yitzchak had with the Plishtim in order to discover again the life water and to look for new sources of life water. And this is our job. This is what we should do. We should be a well of life water and give it also to the next generation. All the best to everybody and good Chodesh Tov u'Mevorach.